do 3. The special meeting board workshop of the Board of Trustees of Houston Community College System for April 24, 2025 is now convened at
1:09 p.m.
This meeting was called for the purposes listed on the duly posted meeting notice. A citizen desiring to appear before the Board of Trustees shall complete the hearing of citizen form 24 hours prior to the meeting and file said application with the Board Services Office. There are no citizens signed up to speak before the board. All of the agenda items for today's meeting are reports. No action is required. So we welcome all of you and welcome the board members. We will begin with item A, accounting, funds, and chart of accounts. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. At the last meeting, the board requested that the administration provide an overview of material that explains how the HCC accounting platform cost centers are designed, including explaining the 5 segments and what those segments represent informationally. And with your permission, Madam Chair, and Dr. Sherry Hahn, Senior Vice Chancellor of Finance and Administration, and Ms. Dawn Stevens, Interim Associate Vice Chancellor, will present the accounting, funds, and chart of accounts as requested.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Board Chair, Trustees, and Chancellor. Dawn and I prepared the following presentation. It's fairly straightforward. It is similar to any other accounting platform that's non-PeopleSoft, because it's basically the same information that's captured for accounting purposes. And so the structure of the 5-segment, what I call cost center or string, is the fund, and we've got 9 different ones to choose from. 4 digits represents the various fund types, followed by the department ID, again 4 digits, followed by the program, 3 digits, that drills down specifically to be a little more granular, followed by something in PeopleSoft that's called class. We use that class feature to identify a location, so for a college location, for example. And then we have the sub-account, which is even more granular, at an additional 5 digits. So Dawn did a great job of explaining the where, who, cost element, and where again, and what. That's sort of the English translation of the function of each of those segments. So that first fund piece of the cost string shows where the money's coming from. The next part, department, is who's receiving it. The next part, the cost element, is, if it's an expense, what that expense is for. The class, again, indicates the where that activity is taking place. And then the what is more specific relative to the nature of the expense. And then we have some examples of, commonly used numbers beneath to show you. Dawn, any other comments you want to make? So this simplifies it even further. We have various account types. Some are balance sheet accounts. The balance sheet, I think I may have mentioned this in the financial training. Balance sheet, its purpose is to indicate to investors or the public whether the entity has enough assets for future liabilities, future expenses. It gives the long-term view of the health of an entity. Whereas the income statement is more along the lines of shorter-term income available. They tie together because the net income on a monthly basis rolls into the balance sheet, so they connect at that point. So what we have here is an asset type, usually begins with a number 1, followed by some digits. And this is accounting, so forgive us both for this language. The normal balance of an asset type account is a debit. That's what one would expect to see in an asset or expense account. Both of those types are typically debit balances. Liability accounts and all the rest, liability accounts, revenues, what we used to call fund balance or remainder. In a partnership, it may be called something different. A corporation, it may be called something different, but it's the remaining interest. All of those are typically credit balance accounts. So when we run a trial balance every month, when Dawn's folks do, she will check to see that she's getting the right debits and credits in those types of accounts. If, for example, an asset account suddenly has a credit balance, she will drill into that and find out why, because usually it means there's may have been an entry error.
Correct.
Okay? And then on some of the financial statements, you will see this terminology, so we felt it would be helpful if we included definitions. So the deferred outflows is, again, a future consumption of an asset. And usually that is a debit balance. A deferred inflow is, again, a future activity, usually a credit balance.
And I just want to make one comment on those slides, that deferred outflows of resources is not, although it's listed under assets, it's not an asset, and the deferred inflows is not a liability, although it's listed under the liability section. Also, these terms came into play, as you know, when we started implementing in, I think it was 2015, the GASBs. So most of the activity in those inflows and outflows is tied to GASB 68 pension and 75 other post-employment benefits.
OPEB. Yep. Thank you. Chime in anytime. Chart of accounts is the next page. So we wanted to talk a little bit about something that always catches my attention. Anything that's called miscellaneous always gives me a little pause. I want to open the hood and see what's contained therein. So a miscellaneous income account is used to record very small receipts and can include the items listed below. When I was in more of an audit function, that would be something I would zero in on for any corporation, partnership, or nonprofit. I want to know what's in, kind of tucked away in there. Again, we wanted to show some commonly used expense accounts, so if in the future you wanted to kind of ask for a data request on any of these in particular, you'll know what account numbers to use. And you'll notice that number 6 ties into what we said at the beginning, that the various account types are numbered in a certain way. So the 6s are usually expense accounts, and there are some of the most common ones. And so we also wanted to call out, again, looking under the hood, what is in other contracted services, because to me it feels a lot like a miscellaneous account, so I want a little more specificity about what's contained therein. So it's account number 65013, and it's used for contracted services that do not have their own sub-account. And some examples are listed below. And I think on occasion we may get a question about why we would use an other contracted service as opposed to having an employee in a certain functional area, like facilities do some of this work. We may not have enough staff to handle the workload, and so at that point we may have to call in a contracted service, especially if there's an emergency or a safety issue. We don't want to wait until someone's available. We want to get service done right away. So that would be another reason we would use other contracted services. The funds overview, as we said, there are 9 different funds. Here they are. Unrestricted is our operating account. That has the most activity. That fund begins with a number 1, restricted number 2, auxiliary number 3, and so forth. Those are the various accounts, fund types that we have. So in summary, the chart of accounts is structured using a fund, department, program, class, which is location, and sub-account structure. From history and habit, I call it a cost center. Some folks here who have similar background call it the same thing. It can be called a string, but basically it's 5 segments that gives you a lot of information about where money is coming from or going to. And the definitions are repeated here. And the whole purpose, I guess Dawn wanted to talk about this, so I will let her do that. The purpose of a chart of accounts in general is?
Well, it serves quite a few purposes, but it also helps in identifying where we spend our money and who's spending the money. It also allows for us to have cross comparison with our peers, as the program code identifies the actual functions, such as if it's instructional or if it's tied to student services, so forth. So it also helped management in making decisions as well as other stakeholders that may be looking for refinancing a bond and want to see where we're spending money or what kind of revenue we're getting in.
And actually, in PeopleSoft or in any ERP, there's a lot of programming that goes into producing the financial statements that you all see every month. The accounts are tied to the various statements that get produced. So it has to be programmed to produce those statements. So that's where this data comes into play. It's not arbitrary, it's very structured. Good. Yeah, we'll be happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you. Board members, any questions?
Yep, I'll go first. Thank you. Great presentation. To your knowledge, has any member of the Board of Trustees seen the current chart of accounts?
I have not shared it in the.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
Do you have an example of this chart of accounts for us to react to? And let me back up because I made this request about the board having a deeper understanding, and I don't know, maybe I wasn't clear in my request. But Dr. Holm, what did you understand my request to be at the time?
I thought you wanted to see an actual chart of accounts, and as I expressed then, and still do express, there are so many hundreds of combinations of funds and locations and accounts. It's not a simple corporate 1 or 2 page chart. It's enormous, so.
And let me add too, I forgot to say this when I was talking earlier. We have the chart of accounts in PeopleSoft. I don't know if the board have access to the
The board
tree,
does not have
but we
access.
can work with IT on getting you maybe some sort of form of the tree. But
Is
it's-
it typical to have a summary chart of accounts where it's not all the hundreds?
It just won't be giving you all the detail that you'd want.
That's not my question. Is it typical to have a summary chart of accounts? Is that a common practice in the financial sector?
I would say it's depending on the organization.
But you can do it. That's the answer. So is there a reason that is not being proffered? I understand no one is trying to make anyone jump over hoops, but the request was pretty clear, I thought, and was not onerous. In a few months, you're going to ask trustees to sit here. Actually, it's starting next week or whenever the next meeting is, to start opining and giving input on a budget that we have no insight on. All we get is a financial statement. Your auditors, I'm not even going to get to the auditors. When we have to go lend or borrow money rather, there's a certain level of information that's given. This board has never received that level of information in the time this trustee has been here. And so when this, let me finish my point. So when this meeting was requested, I thought this was going to be the foundational basis to say, now let's get into the sauce. Because I refuse to sit here another year and be asked to cast a vote on a budget that if the common layperson asked me, so what are your, how do you determine your staffing ratios? Well, what's your ratio of, when you look at your restricted accounts, what are the other things, what are categories that you're concerned about? I have no insight on because we have no purview into. So I'm trying to understand why all of us were compelled to come here on a Thursday on a specific request from about the budget to better understand, because there are a number of competing interests that trustees are deliberating, whether it's tuition, exemption, whether it's deferred maintenance, etc. We can't make those determinations from a financial statement. It is just not good practice. So enlighten me. Maybe I'm too rudimentary in understanding how things are supposed to work. So please, someone better enlighten me.
I think it's 2 things that you're requesting. A chart of account is only going to list the accounts and the description of them. And we can give you a summary. We can provide you with a summary. But that's not going to tie you back to the budget. That's another document. That's the budget that the budget team has been working on. But all a chart of account does is tell you, hey, 6001 is supplies. 62072 is travel. That's all a chart of account does. It's not going to tell you budget information unless you're having the budget document. So that's why when you said chart of accounts, we pulled the chart of accounts and gave you information on that. But we can give you summarized data on the chart of accounts, and then perhaps you can tie it back to the budget that's going to be presented.
I
Thank you.
think that would be excellent.
Let me give some update or reflection on this. We, the board, have never gone in depth on this. What you gave us today, we've never gone in depth because we didn't ask for it. You know, so you just give us a summary of the different accounts, and that's what we've always done. We've never gone into the pieces of it. No, we've never done that because we don't do that. You guys do that. And we trust you guys to do it. And you bring it to us, and as long as we're not in the red, we've been happy with it. But now we have a business major here that wants more information, and so we're just trying to work, bring y'all together so that we can answer his questions. But just to let you know, we've never gone into the depth of it. No.
And Madam Chair, thanks so much for that explanation. I know that, and I appreciate that you're receiving it in the spirit in which it is meant. It's just for someone with my background and the things that I've done, it's just more helpful in providing input and feedback.
And Chancellor wanted to say something.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. I really do appreciate the opportunity to address the work of the staff. I can assure you that all of the members of the team are very, very conscientious and are interested in following up immediately on the request from the board. That is just what we do. We want to do that. And once it is identified specifically what the request is, then of course we will work to get that to you. So if there are additional elements that you are requesting, then we will get to work immediately to make sure that we provide that to you at the next meeting, or even before.
Thanks for saying that, Chancellor. I think Ms. Dawn Stevens hit it on the head. I used the term chart of accounts because we've never even had that. And I knew that if we couldn't even get that, how could we get to the point of connecting it to the budget? So maybe I'm incremental. My undergraduate degree is in biotechnology, and I tell people I was pretty good at molecular biology. But it's an incrementality. In molecular biology, you go from the organism, cellular level, then look what's within the cell to get to the molecular level. So it's the same approach, that at least that's how my mind works in understanding information. So you start big, condense down small, and I don't have to know every single detail, but I need to understand enough about what the cell is to know what's happening in the mitochondria. So that's I hope it's clear now what
Yes,
the
it's
request
clear.
is.
It's
Thank
clear
you.
now, yes.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I make it a point every year to go through the budget as it is presented, but I've also asked for specific information and sent back questions based on the responses that I have received. So that's just, I understand the detail that Trustee Davies is stating, but I do it independently. I don't make that request from the board table. So I'm glad that that request is made. My request, however, is a little differently based on an at-a-glance report that I received from an external entity as audit chair. My request is a little more specific. We need to see a report for all expenditures by description, by vendor, by purchase order, by amount, and by account stream. And I'll explain why. The at-a-glance document showed me that a company can be listed by several different names and look like an independent company each time. And if you are not familiar enough with that company, you would assume that, for instance, 7 companies were receiving payment for a certain account stream, when in actuality it was one company with 7 different names entered in, whether they be correct or truncated or incorrect. So it was an error in terms of understanding what the total receipt of invoicing that company had, the funding they received. And that would tell you whether or not they were exceeding the $100,000 contract limit, or whether they were exceeding their contract limit, period. So this report that I'm requesting can be in Excel format, and I don't think we need it for longer than 2 years, but it's easy to do in PeopleSoft. It's very easy to do. And so the description will allow the board to sort, if they are comfortable with Excel, it would allow the board to sort. But that at-a-glance document gave me a very clear picture of what our expenditures look like, and then I could go back to the budget request and I could compare by budget, by each of the funds, where that money was coming from. And I keep all of my budget books, so from 2018. So it's important to me now to see this, because this will tell me, based upon the amount of funding that's being asked for this budget for this year, it speaks volumes. So far, I think that last year we didn't need a 15% increase. But that's because I went through that budget with a fine-tooth comb. So this year, I expect to see something very different. So if you all can provide a report for all expenditures by description, by vendor, by purchase order, by amount, and by account stream in an Excel spreadsheet format, and submit it to the chancellor, to the board chair, then that's good enough for me as audit chair. Thank you.
Your comment is well taken, because I pulled reports on vendors, and I've seen the same vendor name spelled a number of different ways, and I think it's because different people enter information into PeopleSoft, and they do it in their own style. So I hear what you're saying. We can do that, no problem.
And I think the challenge with that is, even though it looks as if a company is at or below their contract value, in actuality, they are well above their contract value, and it cannot be caught. You cannot catch that error if a company has 5 different names. That you can't catch the error. And then it requires someone to sit there and go through each of those line items and try to find a companion address to confirm that this particular contractor has received $1.5 million instead of $500,000.
Well,
so this will help tremendously.
We can do that. My only hope is that each of those differently spelled vendor names will link into the same vendor ID. When vendors register, they should have the same vendor ID in PeopleSoft. We'll find out once we run the data. Happy to do it.
Thank you.
You. Any other trustees? Okay. No? Okay, if none, thank you very much
Thank
for the
you.
information. The next item is item B, review of information technology 5-year master plan. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. With your permission, Madam Chair, Dr. Sherry Hahn, Senior Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration, and Mr. James Jackson, Interim CIO, will provide a review of information technology 5-year master plan. Dr. Hahn.
Thank you, trustees. James is coming up and will lead this discussion.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Chancellor, trustees. My name is James Jackson. As she mentioned, I'm the interim Chief Information Officer. And with me here is Emma Ramos, and she is the Associate Vice Chancellor of Information Technology. We're here to discuss the Information Technology Strategic Plan, and this is a little different than most strategic plans because we've tried to include a forward look into what spending was coming in future years. On these 2 pages, we list our mission and vision, and basically, we're here to support the faculty, the staff, the students. They're our customers. We're kind of a service organization. Our goal is to increase student engagement, student success, help increase enrollment. So this goal is increase student learning and support. This is a lot of infrastructure items. These are basically compulsory items. The infrastructure initiative listed here will yield significant positive impacts on student outcomes and are essential to establish a robust foundation required to support critical emergency technologies, including advanced virtual reality systems, next-generation robotics, high-fidelity simulation environments, artificial intelligence infrastructure. These investments represent not merely operational updates, but strategic positioning to capitalize on transformative technological opportunities that will improve academic performance, enhance engagement, and create a more dynamic and effective educational journey. Our network switch modernization initiative is coming to an end. This building is the last building to be done, and the funds are in the fiscal year 2026 budget to do this. The legacy switches being decommissioned have provided exceptional reliability, with some units operating continuously since 2007. While specific longevity projections for the new infrastructure cannot be guaranteed, our deployment strategy anticipates a minimum operational lifespan of 7 years from now, with potential for extended service. The switch modernization represents a critical foundation for our upcoming wireless network enhancement program. The newly implemented switches deliver advanced power over Ethernet capabilities, essential for supporting our next generation wireless access points. These state-of-the-art access points will feature Wi-Fi 7 compatibility, full support for the newly available 6 gigahertz spectrum, and comprehensive backward compatibility with legacy 2.4 and 5 gigahertz frequency bands. This strategic upgrade establishes a robust communication platform designed to support growing bandwidth demands and concurrent connection requirements needed to integrate emergent technologies and drive long-term innovation. On here we discuss our ERP system. The Oracle Supercluster supporting our ERP ecosystem, while technically still supported, faces escalating support costs of 15% to 24% annually, making continued maintenance financially unsustainable. We are conducting a thorough ERP modernization assessment, exploring 3 distinct pathways. Infrastructure refresh option, upgrading on-premise hardware assets or migrating to the Oracle cloud infrastructure, basically infrastructure as a service. This represents the most straightforward implementation approach with minimal disruption to existing business processes while leveraging our current ERP software investment on modernized infrastructure. Second option is the Oracle software as a service migration, transitioning our established PeopleSoft environment to Oracle's software as a service ecosystem, potentially realizing operational efficiencies and reducing internal support requirements. And finally, next generation ERP implementation, deployment of an alternative market-leading ERP solution designed to address emerging business requirements and technological capabilities. To ensure rigorous evaluation, we have initiated consultative engagements with the Gartner Group to incorporate industry best practice and market intelligence. Additionally, we are conducting targeted outreach to Texas Association of Community College member organizations that are at various levels of implementation in similar ERP transformational projects. We hope to gather greater practical insights and implementation considerations. Our objective is to develop a comprehensive, defensible cost projection for each strategic option to facilitate informed decision-making regarding the mission-critical infrastructure. And then Emma will discuss the next 2 bullets.
Good afternoon, Madam Chancellor, Madam Chair, Trustees, Chancellor. Our next strategic initiative focuses on leveraging artificial intelligence to transform institutional operations and educational delivery at Houston Community College. while AI capabilities already exist in several of our current systems. We are taking a comprehensive approach to maximize its potential across HCC. The development of an AI governance framework in collaboration with the established AI governance work group, we will develop a comprehensive framework to ensure responsible use of AI at HCC. With the rapid evolution of AI technologies and regulations, our security measures must remain flexible and responsive to new risks. This approach safeguards sensitive data, supports compliance, and reinforces stakeholder trust by aligning our AI initiatives with institutional values and strong governance standards. The implementation of data normalization is a critical foundation for the success of AI. By standardizing our institutional data architecture, we will significantly enhance AI performance, ensuring greater accuracy, improved insights, and operational efficiency, while reducing implementation costs and compliance risks. Upon establishing these foundational elements, we will strategically work with our stakeholders to evaluate AI solutions to enhance faculty instructional capabilities, improve student learning experiences, and modern IT service delivery across the institution. This structured approach ensures our AI initiatives will be implemented responsibly, effectively, and securely, maximizing institutional benefits while minimizing potential risks. The next IT strategic initiative is our comprehensive strategy for software identification and management. Historically, not all software purchases have gone through IT. With procurement assistance, IT has implemented a required software evaluation process that reviews the software's intended purpose, possible comparable solutions, technical requirements, integration needs, and security controls before the solution is procured. We're implementing a centralized software asset management solution, or SAM, integrated with PeopleSoft as our centralized solution to identify, track, and manage all software assets across the institution. This system will enhance license compliance, strengthen security, and support cost optimization. A key component of this initiative is the development of an institutional software catalog, a searchable repository of approved software that includes functionality, licensing details, and departmental usage. By improving visibility into existing resources, the catalog will help reduce redundant purchases, promote cross-departmental sharing, and maximize the utilization of current licenses. Together, the SAM solution and software catalog will support more strategic, transparent, and efficient software management at HCC. We're enhancing the software procurement process by introducing a structured evaluation rubric designed to ensure stakeholders select the most suitable solution to meet their business needs and advance HCC's institutional objectives. The rubric will be applied to assess software proposals against clearly defined criteria, including alignment with stakeholder requirements, technical capabilities, security standards, and strategic priorities. By formalizing this evaluation process, we foster more informed decision-making, streamline approvals, and establish a consistent governance-based approach to software acquisition. Looking ahead, we are establishing a forward-thinking software planning process to anticipate future needs. This initiative will enable us to forecast demand, plan renewals, identify consolidation opportunities, and ensure that our software investments align with HCC's long-term strategic objectives. By shifting from a reactive to a proactive management model, we will enhance service delivery, reduce cost, and more effectively support the evolving needs of our students, faculty, and staff. These interconnected initiatives will transform how we manage software assets at HCC, resulting in improved operational efficiency, enhanced security posture, better resource utilization, and ultimately stronger support for our educational mission. Our next strategic initiative is to significantly enhance both enterprise and customer security at HCC. We're taking a comprehensive approach that integrates cybersecurity with physical security to ensure the safety, resilience, and protection of our campus community against evolving threats. Our first key objective under this goal is to strengthen and mature the security controls that protect HCC's information resources and digital assets. Several targeted initiatives are already underway to support this effort. We're strengthening our incident response capabilities and detection tools to ensure prompt identification and mitigation of cyber threats. In today's rapid rapidly evolving threat landscape, early detection, and swift action are critical to minimizing the impact of cyber incidents. By investing in more advanced monitoring and response technologies, we're increasing our ability to safeguard sensitive institutional data, maintain the continuity of essential services, and protect the privacy of our students, faculty, and staff. We're expanding our cybersecurity awareness training to include students, recognizing their vital role in protecting HCC's digital environment. As frequent users of academic and online systems, students are often targeted by phishing and social engineering attacks. This proactive approach not only safeguards individual users, but also strengthens the institution's overall cybersecurity resilience through a culture of shared responsibility. We're also enhancing our system and log management tools for greater visibility and threat detection. By enhancing our log management capabilities, we gain deeper insights into system activity across the institution, allowing us to detect anomalies and efficiently investigate security events and more thoroughly and ensure better compliance with regulatory requirements. This improvement supports a more proactive and data-driven approach to maintain HCC's cybersecurity posture. We're also improving email security with advanced encryption and threat protection measures. Annual penetration testing is performed to proactively identify and address vulnerabilities in our systems. And finally, we're extending two-factor authentication to students to provide an added layer of security to their accounts. This measure will help prevent unauthorized access, even if login credentials are compromised, and protect sensitive information such as academic records and financial aid. By strengthening account security, we enhance overall trust in HCC's digital environment. That's yours. James will address the access control system.
The next item is the access control and video surveillance system, and this should be very familiar. This was approved by the board back in February, and the work on this should start shortly. And then finally, along the lines of safety, we're going to enhance our emergency notification system. The system currently works by sending out SMS messages to all students and faculty and staff, and it sends a message to all Cisco phones played through the speaker and shown up on the display, and there are phones in every classroom. How this expands this is we're putting speakers in various places across the campuses. If you've been on the 9th floor, you'll see there's one in the elevator lobby. It's a clock. In the event that there was an emergency, there's a strobe light that lights below it. The speaker will announce the emergency, what it is, evacuate in place, etc. And then the clock will change to be like maybe red letters or a red background with yellow letters saying shelter in place, evacuate, etc. One of the big advantages of this is this helps the hearing impaired in the event of a disaster. Everything we have today assumes that you can hear something. And this allows, you have the visual strobe light, you have the directions on what to do, and so that should be a big advantage. And now I'll turn it back over to Emma.
So our final strategic priority is focused on improving our customer service. The IT department serves as a critical support resource, ensuring that students, faculty, and staff can effectively use technology to teach, learn, and work. By providing responsive, solution-oriented customer service, we help minimize disruptions and enhance the overall user experience. Our goal is to create a reliable, supportive technology environment that enables academic and operational success. We plan to actively involve HCC leadership in shaping IT strategic priorities to ensure our technology initiatives directly support institutional goals. By aligning early and consistently, we can better understand the needs of each division and deliver solutions aligned with institutional goals. We're forming an IT governance council made up of representatives from across the college. This group will help identify, prioritize, and evaluate IT initiatives, ensuring transparency, inclusiveness, and shared decision-making. Regular recording meetings with campus leadership will help maintain open lines of communication, provide updates on key projects, and gather feedback on IT services. These touch points will strengthen collaboration and allow us to adapt quickly to emerging needs. We're launching targeted customer satisfaction surveys to gather meaningful feedback on IT services. More importantly, we will use this data to create actionable plans and report progress, demonstrating our commitment to continuous improvement and accountability. And lastly, we're reviewing our onboarding experience for new employees and searching for opportunities to streamline access to essential tools and providing clear guidance on technology resources and system access upon onboarding. And I believe that next step, we'll turn it over to James.
So this chart was what I mentioned at the beginning, where we're trying to incorporate also the dollars that we need to spend in the future for some of these infrastructure projects. That's primarily what is on this page, is the infrastructure upgrades. And the way we come up with these numbers is we look at the best technology we have in place today. So, for instance, the load balancer upgrade in 2028, we upgraded our load balancer in 2023. It has a 5-year life. So we put a placeholder out for 2028, knowing that we're going to have to reevaluate that, look what we have. That upgrade is assuming we're going to do exactly what we're doing today. But if we do something different with the ERP, if the ERP goes to the cloud, that's a big user of the load balancer. We may be able to get away with buying a small load balancer. But, and as we move through the future, we will update this. We update this part of it every single year. And for instance, just to give you a feel of how we calculate these things, for the network switches, we look at every switch we have. We look at every closet, every single switch, and we determine on a switch-by-switch basis what model to upgrade it to, how many line cards it needs, how many ports it has to be available, and then we purchase the new equipment based on that. On some of the other equipment, we don't go to a item-by-item level. We look at, for instance, the APs, we'll look at the number of a certain model of AP we have, and we know that it's going end of support next year. So we'll say we have 227 of those. We'll buy 227 of the newest model and replace it. And then the following year, we'll do the same thing. So those are, we never just throw out a number like $1 million. If you look at the switch upgrades, you see something like that in 28 and 29, in 29 and 30. That's because we know something's going to happen. We're just not a whole lot sure about what it is. And it's kind of a placeholder so that any changes that come don't hit you by surprise. And I do a forecast every year where I forecast what we're going to spend for 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. And then the next year I come back and I update the budget, and I actually do a variance as to how good was my estimate last year for 26, for 27, for 28, for 29. And that's a tool that helps me try to be more accurate in my forecasting and hold myself accountable, because I think a lot of people forget about that.
That's your alarm that says time.
Technology. So these lay out most of the infrastructure projects we've talked about. And as you can see, the infrastructure spend starts to go down. And if we had shown 25, it would be going down dramatically because that switch replacement has completed. And that switch replacement is a very difficult thing to budget because, the model we use today was available in 2027. And so you buy a bunch in 2027, 2028. We bought a bunch in 2009. They ran all the way until 2020. So if in 2018 you told me you should start replacing some of your switches, I would have replaced the switches I had in place with the exact same model. I wouldn't have gotten anything out of it. And so what happens is Cisco will announce end of sale that, like if they announce end of sale today, it's a year from today. And then a year from end of sale, I have 5 years of maintenance. So I have 5 years to get to the new platform. So we're always at least 6 years away from the next platform. And you can never tell what the technology is going to be that's going to push you to the next one. But we kind of always look at that. And that's where I said that the switches we had today, we had a great run out of it. It was, but budgeting, you're budgeting $500,000, $600,000 a year for switches. Then all of a sudden you hit a point that in the next 2 or 3 years, you got to budget $15 million. It doesn't exactly fit like PCs where you can buy a quarter a year and it's very predictable. So whenever the next person's here, 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now, asking for money for switches, if you're still on the board, this is what causes it. And the next one is kind of some of the new initiatives, and I'll let Emma discuss that.
Thank you. So what we did for 2026 is we essentially looked at the items that were included in the budget workshop for new initiatives that we could identify as software requests. And so what you see, the 2.3 is what we gathered. There was not much entered there that was projected past 2026. There was only one project that had 2027, 2028. But you'll see at the bottom where it says total software and applications. Once we establish that governance that I mentioned earlier, and we work with the individual colleges and our stakeholders, and we get a better idea of what their plans are, we can build this strategically and proactively so that we can have these placeholders out in the outer years. And at the bottom are just items that I mentioned as part of our cybersecurity strategy and improving our security posture. That was just included in also FY26 initiatives, and then some of them for 2027. Cybersecurity is so fluid, and it's just a very fluid market that it's really tough to predict or budget out past a couple of years. So that's going to be something that we will work on an annual basis to make sure what else do we need to invest in, what else do we need to improve. All right, and then James, you want to talk about this timeline?
And then this basically lays out a timeline of when we think these events are going to occur, and they match up with the finances on the previous two slides of when things are going to happen. And with that, I'll open it up to questions if there are any.
Thank you for the presentation. Trustees? Yes, Trustee Sean.
So I want to open with a couple of words of thanks. So first, thank you so much for responding to my questions in advance, kind of helped me frame this part of the exchange. Second, I really appreciate y'all having a 5-year outlook on these costs. I appreciate the uncertainty that goes into it, given you're kind of waiting on word from Cisco and other vendors in some cases. And I know the next presentation is also going to have a 5-year outlook, so thanks in advance. But to me, this is a best practice of looking 5 years out. In this trustee's perspective, we should be operating in that 3 to 5 year time horizon because the decisions that we make take that long to percolate through the system to be most effective. So the more that other presentations and departments can get to this 5-year outlook, given the uncertainty with appropriate error bars, I think we're better equipped to make the decisions that we can make from the dais. Couldn't help myself, did a compare and contrast between the numbers on slides 8 and 9 and the numbers in the budget that were presented in the last budget workshop. And I was hoping that you could help me just square the circle a little bit. I see for next year, we've got $11 million in IT infrastructure. We've got roughly $2.5 million in total software, which I'm assuming has already been shifted to one of the execution accounts that wouldn't be included in the budget. And then we've got almost $1 million in cybersecurity. In the budget that was presented to us, we either have $0 or $2 million in the base budget in terms of IT and network infrastructure, and another $8 million in the capital plan. Those numbers don't seem to quite sync up, so just curious, and the reason I'm bringing this up is you had highlighted basically all these items are required due to compliance, especially the $11 million infrastructure bucket. So there seems to be a little bit of a mismatch, so I'm hoping you can walk me through that. Like, did we compromise on compliance previously because we were so concerned about having to tighten our belt? Or what happened there that caused the numbers to not quite add up?
Yeah, but they should match up with, Dr. Hahn asked me this morning to validate the numbers that she had for the FY 2026 budget, and they matched up exactly with what I was looking at. And just to go back to what you mentioned earlier about the 5-year look, I've been managing the infrastructure here for 7 years, and those 7 years, we have always done the 5-year look. And like I said, I do the variances of, this is what I said. Last year I said 26 was going to be this, and 27 was going to be this, and 28 was going to be this. This year I'm now reforecasting. what's the variance on what I forecasted last year versus this year? And am I doing good? Am I missing things? And just trying to make the process better. So I appreciate that.
All right, if y'all wouldn't mind just verifying that the numbers add up or they sync up between the multiple presentations. What I don't want to do is, we're about to enter into a fair amount of haggling, right? And I want to make sure that we're not sacrificing compliance for our other priorities that we're going to be debating.
This is the exact number that I shared with Dr. Hahn this morning that she had in her budget.
But this is coming into the next May 7th presentation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had an $8 million number plus a $0 or a $2 million number in the previous look. And so that's where I'm curious to, did we put ourselves in a position where we were potentially sacrificing compliance?
I see Mr. Jackson still looks perplexed. The April presentation, that's not this morning's number that you conveyed to Dr. Hahn. So we're in arrears on where.
This number hasn't changed since January for this piece. So it may be that what you're looking at is different pieces.
Okay.
No, it's not. It was just what was reflected in what the budget presented. So maybe it hadn't been fully incorporated. Maybe sometimes we did have a conservative looking budget, Trustee Cheatham. I think you and I both made that out there. So maybe perhaps that's the reason, but.
All right, so if you wouldn't mind following up on that and just ensuring that for the May 7th content that we're not sacrificing compliance on how we're funding these IT priorities. The other item, and I've talked with the IT department quite a bit about this over the last few months. I continue to be concerned about the way that the ERP implementation costs and the upgrade costs are reflected, and I appreciate the way that you've explained it. It's not necessarily that our ERP implementation itself has hit obsolescence. It's the supercluster that supports it and runs it that's hit obsolescence. In my experience, though, ERP implementation costs tend to be an order of magnitude, if not more, higher than what is reflected in here. And I'm concerned that given the constraints that are on this institution in terms of flexing our revenue generating ability, there are moves that we could make this year that if that cost grows by an order of magnitude when you run through the analysis, we will not have the flexibility to cover that cost. And first and foremost, we need to make sure that the intake satisfies the outflow. And I'm just a little bit worried that if we make a decision here to either commit to more support for students, tuition or what have you, or to not raise taxes so that we are constrained on how much we can raise them next year, we'll find ourselves with a $10 or $15 million hole in the budget because either property values won't bail us out like they have for the last few years, et cetera. So I'll go from pontificating to a question now. We will be setting the tax rate later in the year. Do you think, appreciate that you'll be reaching out to other community colleges around Texas that are in various stages of implementing this. Will we have that information back by the time we ultimately have to set a tax rate so that if those numbers end up being far in excess of what's envisioned here, we still have some flexibility to maneuver in this budget cycle?
We can try to give you some idea by then. The challenge with something like this is when you talk to, and I was not able to identify where the previous estimates had come from, but if they came from talking to other community colleges, the problems you run into is, do they have the same number of students, faculty, and staff that we do? Do they have the same amount of customization that we do? Do they integrate with the same number of external applications that ours do? Which path did they choose? Did they choose the software as a service path, or did they switch a vendor? And then also sometimes when you purchase these products, they have built into them that they utilize best practices. If you buy Oracle's software as a service, which is a different software program than we have today, it will incorporate best practices in it. Are we as an organization going to accept all those best practices and not do customizations? Or are we going to want to customize it? And all of those things drive costs. So I think we can. I've done a lot of research over the last couple of weeks since the last board meeting, and some of these questions came up. And the estimates for implementation costs for ERP systems for higher education range from $1 million to $254 million, which was the University of Texas did it statewide, and that was what their cost was. We're obviously going to be somewhere in between there, but a lot of times they say that that the cost of the software or the cost of your subscription, because when you do a software as a service, you don't really buy software, you buy a subscription and you pay as you go, that the cost of information is usually 2 to 2.5 times the cost of the subscription. So if I were to estimate, and I hate to do this because whatever number I'm going to say is going to be wrong. It's going to either be high or low. I would estimate that if we were to do and there are just so many things that are unknown, like how much customization we're going to do, how much are we going to modify our processes to fit the best of breed processes that are built into the software. But I would probably say that the implementation costs, the cost of the software would probably be somewhere from, if we went with a software as a service solution or a new ERP, it'd probably be $4 to $6 million a year, and then the implementation cost might be 2 times that, something like that. But it's just.
Can I follow up your question with something?
And then the implementation timeline varies from something like 12 to 36 months. So.
No, appreciate the swag. So
Yeah, yeah.
If I could, and I'm glad that you sort of clarified that, we have a $2 million line item here for FY 2027. And when we've asked the question in the past, I see for FY 26, we have this $350,000 vendor assessment. Does that assessment help us make the decision on one of the 3 options, or have we, does the selection precede the vendor assessment?
I think the selection will precede the vendor's selection. And we also have to bring in the stakeholders from the different pillars within our ERP, the finance, the human resources, the student information systems, and identify, we need to create a committee with all of them on it. We need to look at all these options. It is from the numbers I just shared, which are back of the envelope guesses, they are large numbers, and it's going to take a commitment of the entire organization. We can keep the cost down if we do as little customization as possible, but that takes a lot of discipline, and you have to look at everything you want to customize and say, why should we be doing this differently than someone else? What advantage does it give HCC if we have to make this change? And if we do it that way, we can try to keep costs down.
I think we're on the same page because, to Trustee Cheevan's point, you laid out these 3 options: the SaaS, the next-gen ERP, or just the
Infrastructure as a service or on-prem,
with Oracle. And so by the time we make the decision, because timing is also important, right? If you're going to make the decision in, FY 25, we've got 4 or 5 months to do that before you start going through trying to solicit, the vendors for the assessment period, and that's supposed to be FY 26. But when you reflect a $2 million budget item for FY 27, the timeline itself was questionable to me because I just don't think you could do this in 12 months. And when you think about, small county community college at $1 million to 254, we're not a small college. And so the $2 million in 1 year, it's a bit of a pipe dream, but you have to understand as policymakers, we're banking on that number. And it's percolating in your head that, we could go give tuition assistance. We can go do all these other very important things. But if you do it and then someone shows up here in 24 months and says, by the way, here are all the things that we're going to need. So it's been vital. Great presentation, by the way. And if we could get your comments reduced in writing, if you would share that, because it was a lot of information that provided a roadmap. That's very helpful because this is something that at least I think many of us want to be able to revisit. Hey, this is what we discussed, and it sets the expectation. But if we go into this budget cycle thinking we're just looking at $2 million for FY 27 with nothing else in the subsequent years on implementation, that just sells us short. So how do we reconcile that from where we are today to where we need to be to make a decision by June?
So what I did and where the $2 million came from is I assumed that it would be the option A, the on-prem or the Oracle Cloud infrastructure, which means we continue to use our existing Oracle licenses. We just move it to hardware, either new hardware that we put on premises or to Oracle's hardware in the cloud. And that was the one that was easiest to predict. Also, if Oracle comes out next year and says our supercluster, or if they come out tomorrow and say our supercluster is end of support a year from now, that's probably the solution we're going to have to implement as a bridge before we look at something else, because we have to keep things going. So I think that's why it was put out in the budget, was because, I know things have been shared in the past. This process hasn't started. I put these items in here basically from an infrastructure replacement perspective that, hey, supercluster hasn't been announced end of life yet. It's been going up 15 to 24% since 2022, and so it went from something like $100,000 to now it's $200,000. And when you talk about a $2 million expense, that's not horrible, but at some point, and I don't know when, Oracle is going to say, this is the date we will stop supporting that hardware. And then to have hardware that your main ERP system's on that's not supported, that's not getting patched for security vulnerabilities, et cetera, is extremely risky. So but I agree that there is not a guesstimate of what moving to the software as a service solution is, or moving to a new ERP system with another vendor.
Madam Chair, Chancellor, if we might, I think it would be infinitely helpful. Let's not reduce it to the easiest or the most approachable solution. Let this board get a chance to look at what are the options. Like we talk about ourselves as this 22nd century college. We're leading on AI. We're talking about what the implications of these technologies are going to be. And if we limit ourselves today, understanding where we believe this college wants to be by FY 2030, I think it's a disservice if we don't at least look at all the options and then sift through. So don't let your position be, let me give the board the easiest approachable solution. It should be, hey, board, here are the options. Here are the ways. Here's what the stakeholders told us. You didn't mention college presidents, so I saw Dr. Jerome Drain twitch a bit. So make sure college presidents are in that focus group of people that we talk to really understand what is the best option, so we're not just settling for what's easiest. Trustee Cheeman, I yield back. Sorry, but I just wanted to follow up on the ERP.
No, I appreciate that. I do have one more question. I'll do my best to channel Trustee Wilson since he was unable to attend today. Your comments about the escalating maintenance costs on the Oracle cluster caught my attention. I think it'll be a theme as we talk through the rest of the day as well. It would be really helpful to understand, as we implement infrastructure, be it IT or otherwise, that drives to a reduction in O&M costs or potential liabilities or what have you, just to quantify the upside and the downside. We had a discussion recently about a contract that will come up at the next meeting, and there's a potential for us to get discounts with facility rentals associated with that, and it could end up being a wash, right? So instead of the board making a decision on X dollar commitment, it's really a decision to not spend any incremental dollars over time, which makes that needed perspective is important. With the ERP upgrade, and based on the numbers you threw out, I don't think it'll quite be this, but if we're investing so much in ongoing maintenance that eliminating that ongoing maintenance or simplifying it, reducing it, would cover a third of the cost. That changes the discussion. And we would also expect, per Trustee Wilson's point, that we would see a downward trajectory in those maintenance costs in the base budget, so that we're taking advantage of those. And I appreciated your accountability point. I think we should, all take that approach, that if we're going to invest in something intended to reduce O&M expenses, we should hold ourselves accountable to that in the budget. So just as you're working through that work, I think making this visible through the process and to the board when it comes back to us would be really helpful.
Yep, no problem. And I will go back and look and try to give you a range of what we think the solutions may be. I might not be able to nail it down to a number for some of the other options. And I didn't mean, by putting the $2 million in the budget, I did not mean to imply that the other options were off the table. Those other options are probably where we'll end up going. But that's a decision that the stakeholders have to make. That's not an IT decision. So,
But
Thank
for-
you.
For budget purposes, it just helps when we see
yeah.
the
No,
scenario. and
I
then-
get it. It was just, there's just so many variables. It's like, Jim, can you tell us what the lottery number is going to be tonight? It's like, I can give
And
you
what
my
I look
guess,
at,
but
what
you-
I also look at is, I know that IT comes around probably at every meeting, and we always put money in it. So I'm thinking is, okay, how much did we give and add on throughout the year? You know, we budgeted so much, but we still added on more. So, our balance from that amount, that's for me, I want to know what's our balance on there, and can we use it in some of these other areas that we're going to update, and materials and equipment and all. So that's what I'm looking at. So,
Madam Chair,
yes, ma'am.
there are a couple of things on here. I think we had this conversation, 18 months ago. What is the inventory? What inventory do we have that gives us a baseline for this amount of budgeting?
So the inventory for the switches, I actually have them right here. Each switch is listed, each location it's located at, the serial number.
That's this year, correct?
That is as of right this minute.
What was last year's inventory? Or what was the inventory 18 months ago when we were requested to upgrade the switches? And it's not just a switches question.
Yeah.
It is an IT hardware, software inventory. What is the software inventory, and have we used the software that we purchased over the last 3 years?
I'll answer that in two parts. The hardware inventory, we have that, and we can provide that to you. All of the switches are monitored, so if a switch goes offline, we know it. We know exactly where they are. All of the APs are monitored. We know where they are. As a matter of fact, I was checking before this meeting started. There were 57 people connected to the 4 APs in this room. All
That
the
was-
PCs
that's-
we have inventory for, and then all the classroom projectors and those type of things we have information for. The software, that has been a work in process because, as Emma mentioned, there was a process previously several years ago where the colleges could purchase their own software and we weren't aware of it. A process has been in place for the last several years where they have to do a software request form, and even for renewals, and procurement helps us enforce that. And we do a security evaluation and so forth, and that has gotten the software, our visibility to the software. And then that was one of the things that Emma discussed was the software asset management module for ServiceNow. We are implementing that right now. And the primary goal for that is when someone wants software, it's, I want software that does something with photography. It's hard for them to know, do we already have that? Because it might have been purchased by Northwest Campus, or it might have been purchased by someone else. So all that stuff we're pulling in because we need to know that. And once we fully implemented this software, so the hardware, we can give you the hardware today. The software, we can give you probably 85, 90% of it today. And the ones we're missing are going to be the small items. We're not going to be missing a Microsoft or a Canvas or something like that. All those things we have. It's going to be the smaller items that will be missing.
So the inventory you're holding is what has been recently purchased?
It's everything.
That document.
It's everything that's. This is everything that's deployed. What's recently purchased is on another page, because it will replace what's in here.
And let me explain, Chancellor, where I'm going with this. I asked this question. There was no inventory. I specifically asked this question 18 months ago. There was no inventory, which led me to ask the question about the personal computer upgrades that were requested. I think the request in the budget was for 3,600 laptops, and I'm looking at $5.6 million for personal computer upgrades and student loaner laptops at $125, which means on the average you're buying 100 student loaner laptops a year for 60,000 students. But personal computer upgrades is, if they were all laptops, would be 3,700. one of the challenges with IT infrastructure is understanding what you don't have rather than what you wish you had. ServiceNow is, as I understand it, underutilized. Is that correct? We don't utilize all of the options that ServiceNow has to offer, even though we paid fully for ServiceNow. Is that correct?
We are currently utilizing the modules that we are licensed for.
And how many
including the asset
modules
management.
is that?
It's predominantly the IT service management module, which has, and the asset management module, which we are currently utilizing. We just recently implemented the strategic portfolio management module, which we've implemented in IT, and we will be expanding to the enterprise office of project and change management. And we also purchased a governance and compliance module as well from a security perspective.
So ServiceNow is just now being utilized in terms of the modules that we purchased that we weren't doing anything with.
No, we've been adding modules to the ServiceNow platform. It's a platform where you can add additional license modules.
How many modules did we purchase 18 months ago? When did we purchase ServiceNow? Let me ask the right question, because I think I'm asking my questions out of turn. When did we purchase ServiceNow to utilize in this system?
So to
At
my,
least 2018, that's
Yeah.
when I started. I think they
So-
were implemented at that, 2018, 2019.
So 2018, 2019, and what this board needs to know is when we purchased ServiceNow, the number of modules we purchased with it, and when we began to implement those modules. And now, this year, we're implementing the asset management. Now, I specifically asked that question about inventory because inventory tells you when your hardware is going to be considered obsolete and when your software is going to be considered obsolete. That list was not available because there was no list. So now that we have to do it as a result of asking that question 18 months ago and being given answers, I'm still looking at the same dollar values switched around because I kept up with that. We are not cloud-based. We should be fully cloud-based by now, but we are not. So we're moving toward that, and that speaks to my two colleagues and where we need to go as opposed to what a wish list would be. I'm looking at this IT infrastructure, and I can tell you, unfortunately, I do cost estimation on IT infrastructure. So I would like to have a conversation before I ask any more questions because our funding needs for IT infrastructure need some questions answered. And I won't put the things that I would wish I could say today. I cannot. But I can tell you that the funding needs for this IT infrastructure begs several questions. And so I will not bring those questions up on public record today. I'll just make a request from the audit chair position because I think this requires a lot more depth than what I'm looking at.
Ms. Ramos, it seemed like you were trying to offer a response somewhere in there.
yeah, we can, the hardware, there's two asset management modules within ServiceNow, a hardware asset management module and a software asset management module. The hardware asset management module has been in place since I arrived at HCC about 3 years ago. But we can go back and pull an actual implementation of when that, and the software asset management module is the one that we are currently implementing now, this fiscal year.
Chancellor, were you going to respond?
I was going to respond. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I'd just like to reassure the board that we are examining some of the issues related to the questions that you are asking, and we hope to provide you with an update very, very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no further questions on this item. We'll go to the next one.
I'm sorry. Ms. Ramos, you talked about AI. Is there any contemplation of this eventual transition to 7G as part of how we're thinking about all of this? Or it might have been you, Mr. Jackson, talked about. I'm just trying to think about with all the updates that we're doing, are we contemplating eventual adaptation or adoption of IoT and how our system will be able to jive with that?
The infrastructure we're putting in place, I think you're referring to when I was talking about the wireless upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the implementation we're doing now, it is the latest wireless equipment that is available from Cisco. It does include, it is supported by Wi-Fi version 7. It also supports the 6 gigahertz. One of the interesting things about Wi-Fi version 7 is it gives you location information to within several meters. So it can be used for, other people have used it for like wayfinding applications, so that if you're on Central Campus and I need to get to J. Don Boney room 214, where is that? Well, you can go to a web page and punch it in, and it will give you walking directions to get there. It can also be used for to give an estimate of occupancy in a building, because you can see how many people are connected. And like I said, when we started this meeting, there were 57 people on these APs. There are probably more here, so not everyone has it on, but you can learn over time that when we have this number of people in a room, then it affects our heating and cooling, and we need to increase the cooling, et cetera. And you can get a feel for where people are, but it's not a one-to-one person count, because not everyone has a device, and people that do have devices, they may have more than one. So those are some of the things that are available with Wi-Fi 7.
Okay, thank you so much for the information, and we'll now move to item C, Facilities Plan and Deferred Maintenance. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. This item focuses on the program facilities master plan with deferred maintenance included that prioritizes campus needs. And with your permission, Madam Chair, Dr. Hahn, Mr. McCracken, and Mr. Walker will co-present the facilities plan and deferred maintenance. Dr. Hahn?
Thank you. Yes.
Madam Chair, is it okay if Dr. Hahn sits, because she's been standing at that podium the last few presentations? Please.
Of the hour.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm going to skip through the presentation pretty quickly, but I'll be happy to go backwards to cover any items if you have additional questions on them. And I did get some questions after this material went out. I'll try to answer those, the ones that I can, as we go through. So basically, I just want to tie this back to one of the Chancellor's goals, right? This was Chancellor's goal, I believe it was number 8, about a facilities master plan with deferred maintenance included that prioritizes campus needs. Our objectives in this, I'm not going to go through all of these, but we needed to really be able to do a couple of things. We needed to accurately forecast and plan the work. We needed to do it in a way that was flexible, because we know that the dollar values are large, that we're never going to get all of the money in an even kind of bucket. So we need to be able to very quickly kind of adjust, and we needed to be able to show enough detail so that people understood where the money was going. And we needed to be able to track where the money went. So that we could kind of come back next year and show here's the difference. But we also needed to be able to do that without spending a year and a lot of money going out and redoing a facility condition assessment. And so our approach was to use the people who are touching our equipment every day to reassess all of those items, to update the old database with that new information and make those adjustments, and then to just continue to do that every year as we continue to update that, add new items, update items, reassess, and then ultimately around 2029, we will need to do another facility condition assessment where we get an outside set of eyes just to kind of verify where we're at. Just very quickly, we know that as deferred maintenance increases, and to be clear, so we have life cycle maintenance, which is things have an expected lifespan, and when they're past that lifespan, they become deferred maintenance. Right, and so while we talk about a big number of $400 million, that's not all deferred yet, but will be over the course of time. But as that number goes up, the quality of the environment goes down. And in particular, the risk of unexpected repairs, unexpected outages, and cascading failures where multiple systems fail really increases. And ultimately, you can end up in a position where you're rearranging classes or you're not able to utilize a building, particularly given long lead times. We were given a lead time of 31 months on a piece of equipment. How real that is, I'm not real sure. But 6 months, 9 months, 12 months is pretty typical. I'm going to skip through some of this. So this is essentially the process where we're going to do an annual assessment. We're going to rank those items. We're going to review those projects internally to make sure that they make sense. We're going to bring that list back to the board. We're going to try to get budgeted money, and then based upon the funds that are available, we're going to basically come down X million dollars, draw a line, look for some items we may move above or below the line because it makes sense from an economy of scale. And then we work on those projects and we start that work and prepare for next year. In terms of how we rate these, essentially what we're looking at is the impact of the item, the urgency of the item, and the overall building condition. And we're simply tallying those up. If we look at the highest, so in this case, the highest prioritization score means it's the most urgent. And so what you see is what we have called the current need. Of that, some of that is already funded. In our database, we are not marking it off until the work is completed, which may be 6 months to 18 months to 24 months after the funding has been allocated, depending on the length of the project. So you see the current need, which is really combined of unfunded, which means we don't have the money for it yet, plus the funded amount. If we were to include this building and across the street, 31 and 3200, the total for current need would go down by about 5 million. And over the course of 5 years, it would go down by roughly 100 million. I don't have the breakdown of what the prioritization was.
Well, you said it would go down?
The amount of unfunded need would go down because the deferred maintenance for this building and across the street is significant.
Funded. And it's funded?
No.
Or it's unfunded?
There's a portion of it that's funded.
So
Elevators.
why would the unfunded go
Right.
down? That's
It's like
what
the
I'm-
elevators is funded. I'm sorry, let me re-say it. There was a question of how do these numbers change if I move 3100 and 3200 to the column on the right, which is items for Woodridge, Katy Mills, and Gulfton. And if we remove it kind of from the equation, the number would go down. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is the same set of numbers sorted by system type. So obviously, when we do it this way, we're going to have a lot of 9s. We're going to have a lot of 10s. And the way we break the tie is in this order, where we're doing life safety first down through kind of specialties. So life safety, mechanical, which is your HVAC, your conveyances, elevators, are going to be towards the top, and then it works its way down. In the packets that you have, there's a lot of kind of attachments to it with a lot of data that ultimately came from some spreadsheets with 80 gazillion rows in it. This is just a sample of the prioritized list that has, and what you see is it's by college, by building. We put the information about the building on there, how many square feet the building is, what year the building was built, and then the prioritization for that item, what the item is, how it kind of rated out. And then this is just sorted in priority order. This chart is slightly different than the one that you have in your packet because the orangish, reddish color in the one we provide you in the packet only had one column. And so this is actually the way we intended to show it. Essentially what this is doing is breaking it out by building. So instead of looking at 5,000 individual items, let's look at 76 buildings. As you look at the buildings, we're showing what it is that the deficiencies were before we did the update, what changes we made when we did the update, and what the deficiencies or deferred maintenance are currently as a result. So you can kind of track the work. But then what we're showing is the projection for that building over the course of the next 5 years. Right? We're also showing the facility condition index, which at a building level is not exact, right? Because it's amount of maintenance, deferred maintenance divided by the value of the building. So there's some, on a system level, it's pretty good. Individual building, there's a little bit of wiggle room. We're showing that current, and we're showing what that looks like in 5 years. We also added a column for operational costs, right, where we're estimating a little bit over $5 per square foot for operational costs. We're putting that in. We are working on the data for the utilization and capacity, right? So, you know, we report enrollment numbers a lot of ways. We report by college, by program, by type of credit. We don't necessarily report enrollment by classroom or by building. We have 5-week session, 8-week sessions, second start, full term. So that calculation, Dr. Burge has been working on it, is getting pretty close. So we can actually look at actual utilization by building and match that up with the capacity of the building. Likewise, our capacity of buildings is currently in the system for registration purposes. And so it's not based on the physical capacity, it's based on the registration capacity. So we're getting close. We then took a look at, you have about 3 different scenarios we presented here. We could do more. $0 a year investment, what happens over the course of the next 5 years, essentially, how much deferred maintenance we would have at the end of that time, what our estimated facility condition index would be at a $15 million a year investment, which has sort of been our run rate, and then at a $40 million a year investment. Graphically, this is that same information, what that looks like, where you see the 3 scenarios. So just very briefly, some strategies, what we're doing and what can be done. Number one, we have to maximize the effective life of what we have, right? So it's really important that we continue to do that preventive maintenance. The budget that we have for that is adequate to get that preventive maintenance done on time, on schedule. It's scheduled out in our work order system because we have to make what we have last as long as we can make it last. Then we have to really prioritize, which is what this is about, prioritizing the maintenance projects for the funding that we do get. But there are some other things that we can do. We can reduce our footprint. And the way you can reduce footprint is a couple of ways. These are not recommendations, right? These were just examples of what you could do. If you have an educational development center, which is not used as heavily as it was, you have a deferred maintenance savings. You also have an operating cost. But to make that change requires a whole lot of changes on the instructional side and working with Central College President. Similarly, you have ATTC, Automotive Technology Training Center at Northline. And then you have at North Forest, you also have an automotive center, right? If you consolidate the 2 of those, that removes some deferred maintenance savings and some operating costs. The other way commonly people address savings is through a financing of a bond, or you operate until buildings fail. I list these examples not because they're recommendations, but because these are kind of the realities of what happens over the course of time when we don't fund the deferred maintenance, right? And so please don't take these as Bob McCracken's going to close my building. That's not what I'm saying, right? But the reality is that it does take a certain amount of money to continue to fund them. And so our next steps is, based upon the funding we get, we're going to do our list. We're going to keep doing that preventative maintenance. I know there's a piece about contingency planning as it relates to maintenance. And so we have some plans in place for contingency planning if finances are not as we plan them to be. But also to really integrate the building utilization capacity data into discussions with the colleges to look for opportunities for savings, right? If I can consolidate classes in the evenings to a few buildings, that saves me on operating costs. It saves me on housekeeping costs and janitorial, that kind of thing. In terms of timeline, if the board goes in the direction of changing kind of the portfolio, the timeline for that is really around November, because that allows us time to integrate data into the budget presentations that start in January. So if the board chooses to go in that direction, then that would be kind of the timeline. It would be most effective for the following year budget. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Trustees, questions? You're not
Have a
getting off
comment.
that easy, Bob.
I have a comment.
Almost, I started to back up.
Well, no, I just want to say that this falls in line with the creating a system of evaluation was what we needed. So this is that system, and it falls in line with our other system for our top 10 risks, because we understand that we have to operate a budget based on needs and risk. And so the risk is included in here. And I appreciate that, as tough as that is to do. The other issue is, although we have 78 facilities, we use what, 22? Is that about right?
I think we use all of them. I wish we used them all more.
So some of the challenges with that is, you were right, trying to understand how we're going to utilize them in terms of student need, rather than having pretty buildings that every now and then people go into. So thank you for that. As audit, there are a couple of audit questions that I have to send to you.
Okay.
For you to give me some clarity, and then I'll send those. The service areas versus the tax paying regions is an issue. So we need to look at that. What happens to us when we focus on service areas more than we focus on tax paying areas, and how that affects us in the long run. So thank you for that.
Okay.
That's it.
Mr. Chiba?
I'm going to keep it light because you addressed all of my questions very artfully woven in through your points, so thank you very much for that. I am curious, you mentioned portfolio, and I think there was some discussion brought to the board, I think it was last October or November, about some kind of facilities and programmatic strategy work that was kicking off. We haven't received an update on that in a while, and I know that our agenda for these meetings is fairly stacked for the next couple of board meetings, but it might be helpful to get an update through the WAB or something like that to get an understanding of how that work is progressing, because I think it feeds in directly to that question of potentially high grading our portfolio and working, to the best of our ability, because I know some of the high deferred maintenance properties are also some of our busiest campuses, so difficult to get those off the books.
Okay. We
But
can do
certainly to get a view of that would be really helpful.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for the presentation. I think this is probably the best presentation I've received since my tenure on this board on deferred maintenance, right? You really took the time,
Thank you, James.
Mr. Walker, because I think you listened to our feedback and you brought that back, which was, how do we better understand the facilities, what the condition is, utilization of them, what they cost us to operate. I know you use $5 on average. At least that's a good benchmark to understand that if I have building X, obviously if we're talking about Coleman College, that probably costs us more than $5 per square foot. So that's very helpful. One question I wanted to delve into, as far as the current FCI ratio, facilities conditions ratio, where are we writ large for the college? And I'm saying it in light of slide number 16, where you list what happens in the different scenarios, the slide right before that one, where if we spend 0, spend 15, spend 40. So can you talk us through that?
Sure. So there's a little caveat with the data is that in the database, the years are discrete and it's calendar year, right? So it doesn't align perfectly with budget years. So this is 2025 is this calendar year, which is a little bit different than this budget year. But essentially what you see is the numbers right now are, we're below 5%, but that's a little bit misleading if you think about the process that we just did. Because what we just did is we went through and we took all of the currently due deferred maintenance items and we reassessed them and said which ones can wait. And so we pushed things out 1 year, 2 years. So if you see between year 1 and year 2, you see a big jump, right? And then it's kind of a smooth trajectory after that. And so essentially we are sitting on the border right now between good and average. Right, so we're a little bit under 10%. I think before we did these adjustments, we were around 8 something. And over the course of the next couple of years, we're going to be pretty solidly in that average condition category. But by the time you get out to 2030, as a system, we're getting into the below average. And significantly, we have some campuses that when you look at the building data, some campuses are getting to be in really pretty bad shape at that point, down into the poor, and in some cases very poor. And there's some very busy campuses, right? They're not lightly utilized, they're heavily utilized campuses in some cases. Did that answer the question?
It did, and the follow-on to that is because in the scenario, you described the $15 million a year scenarios where we end up in this sort of below average by FY 2030. Even in the $40 million a year scenario, at best, we're average. So given...
If you don't make any other changes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what I think it's just it's just an exchange about this.
Yeah.
So how do we envision a scenario in which we maintain sort of a good rating? What would need to happen so that it's not, if the $40 million a year number doesn't get us there, what else would we need to do?
So I think that's when you get into some portfolio options, right? So if I take, as an example, if I take Spring Branch, it has 3 buildings that are all they're not in excellent condition, right? They're reaching end of life. And if you want to consider replacing 3 buildings with 1 new building, you both address the deferred maintenance and your ongoing maintenance, right? And your operating costs to some extent. So you can do those kinds of things. If you take a Stafford where you have some older buildings and then you have some other buildings and you can combine and you can replace old with new, is often a way that you address this. And that doesn't necessarily involve closing down locations or doing those kinds of things, but you're actually upgrading the facilities, replacing it with something new, as opposed to trying to get an old facility to continue to function well. Those are big decisions. Those are, those things are not something I can recommend from the podium, right? I mean, but
certainly
those
not
are the
from
types
the
of things that
podium, but I think in the larger context of this ongoing dialogue, how do we get from here to there? Like, the conversation isn't going to happen by us sitting here once a year listening, oh man, we've got to do better. Some steps have to be taken between now and, let's just say, FY 27 to concretely look more closely at this and make some determinations around, the facilities assessment is not just a document. It really is about weighing priorities and making hard decisions about certain things that we'll have to do that just serve the college's interest in the long run.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that when we're looking at buildings about what to do you want to build a new building, right? It's not just a cost question, right? There's the other side of the equation, which is these costs, right? So these costs are on the back side of that. So sometimes the price tag is not really the price tag. And so this is almost a discount on some options. I think that I like to think of this as a discount, where you're discounting the cost of a new building.
Sure.
With savings on old.
Sure. I'm going to delete my tweet that you wanted to tear down Spring Branch, by the way. So
Yeah, please.
I got a little carried away there.
And the one about Central and there, and then North Line, and I'm not sure if I can make it back to my seat,
Oh. Trustees, any other questions? Chancellor, any comments?
Thank you very much, Mr. McCracken. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity that the presidents have been working in their areas with the advisory committees and with their staff as well to assess their facilities. And of course, Mr. McCracken has been working very closely with them as well. And so we do have more information that we would like to share with the board. And so we'll work together collaboratively to ensure that with respect to the request that Trustee Cheban made, that we can incorporate that discussion and those recommendations in the report that will be presented by Mr. McCracken at the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next is item D, the FY 2026 prioritized budget requests.
Thank you very
Chancellor will bring up the item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. With your permission, Mr. Chair, Dr. Sherry Hahn will present the fiscal year 2026 prioritized budget request. Dr. Hahn.
Pleasure to present this. This information was provided as context. so that you would have some detail to understand what all of the originally $66 million that became $62 million worth of wish list items was comprised of. So I just wanted to point out that, let me jump ahead to it. The known commitments are pulled out in this way just so you could get a sense of the source, which entity or part of the college is asking for it, and then the expense type. But this is all baked into the existing expenses. So it's not in addition, it's just, ongoing commitments that we can't get out of for the FY26 budget year. And so I just assume that you've, had a leisurely walk through the multiple pages so you could see what, everyone was looking for. None of these essentially beyond the known commitments have been built into the soon-to-be 6 scenarios because we can't afford it. We focused the new scenarios. You haven't seen scenario 3.
All of us are buzzing. It's the,
You haven't seen scenario 3 yet. You soon will. We built in 3 more because, to your point, you wanted to have more choice. In all of those 3 rosier, more optimistic scenarios than the dire ones we presented in the first 2 choices, each one of those ratcheted up a little more spend on IT and deferred maintenance. That's what we felt was really critical, so that's kind of where we focused. So none of these are really being entertained. Any questions at all? Happy to, yes, sir.
So really appreciate y'all providing this information in response to our discussion at the last board meeting. It was really insightful to dig in. Want to start with a couple of kind of accounting reconciliation questions and then make a broader comment that I think builds on some themes we've talked about through the day. So I'm looking at slide 9 and just trying to reconcile some of the numbers. So the IT infrastructure network number very nicely syncs with the number that we saw before. But my understanding is that the numbers on slide 9 are incremental to what's been proposed in prior budgets, which also included an $8 million IT capital item and either the 0 or the 2 non-capital items. So just trying to understand, is this truly purely incremental on top of what we'd seen previously, or like how do those numbers all?
I will have to get back to you on how it ties back to an earlier version.
Okay.
Just to make sure that we're clear.
All right, thank you. The next item on deferred maintenance, I see, you got the 15 million that was in the numbers provided previously, plus the 29 that's here gets you to 44. All the project managers in the room are probably thinking, where's the contingency? Contingency is scope. So I'm just a little bit worried that that contingency isn't included in this, and we need to top up with another 6 million to make sure that if we decide to go in the direction of 40 million, that we have that contingency covered to include, all of the unknown unknowns that we're seeing in the world around us today. So just if you wouldn't mind commenting on that, please.
I'm not sure how to answer that at this point.
Okay. If y'all wouldn't mind just reconciling that for the
Sure.
next time we look at these numbers, that would be really
Sure.
helpful. The broader point that I want to make is, and I'll skip ahead to the next deck just as a good example. I'm a little bit, I guess, in a lack of ability to provide feedback on the numbers because all we're showing is the expense and none of the impact and outcomes that these additional expenses might yield to the institution if we were to spend the money. So we've got this, nearly $22 million in additional personnel, and the reference to the next deck, I love the way that this was framed up in the tuition assistance, and I'll anchor on the Houston Reconnect one because I think it makes it most visible. And I'm looking at the presentation from February because that shows some of the outer year numbers, that with that investment, we would have an incremental 1,500 completions in year 1, which would yield an incremental $8.5 million in revenue in year 2, and an incremental 4,500 completions in year 2, which would yield an incremental 25.5 in revenue in year 3. Those kinds of numbers would be amazing to tie to numbers like this so we can actually make an informed decision.
I know. I kind of knew what the need was. We are in the middle of providing data that lines up with all of the detail here. It's not going to meet your expectations in terms of specific dollar amounts. It's going to show what the narrative description of the benefit was. It's going to show the goals that would have been achieved that we focused on this year and which items hit them and which goals were achieved by that. But it's not going to be that crisp dollar amount that you're envisioning, similar to the tuition assistance plans. So, but we are creating that now. Jackie is working on it.
Okay, will that be available for the May sequence of
Oh, for
meetings?
sure.
Okay.
For sure. Probably even before then, we can send it out through a TI.
Yeah, I suspect that that's something that we're going to need adequate time, lots of time, more than the usual week or so to really stew on and chew on
Sure.
if we're going to consider this incremental 22. So the sooner that y'all could get that to us, of course, don't want to rush it. It needs to be quality. But the sooner the better, I think.
Certainly.
All right. Thank you.
Colleagues, any other questions? Dr. Horn, if we could just touch on some of these items a bit more. On the tuition assistance initiatives, just walk us through those. These are proposed, or where do we stand exactly in terms of what's to be contemplated by the May meeting?
We are
budget
going
presentation?
to present them. They've been updated with new May figures from THCCB. We're going to present them again for decisions about which one of the three you would wish to pursue. We have built into all of the 6 scenarios, you haven't seen them all yet, use of fund balance as an either or. Either we would have used it for one of the tuition assistance plans, which we're thinking Houston Reconnect is the one that throws the greatest revenue over the outer years, or we would have used it for credentials of value support, completions support. So one way or another, we've just left it a kind of either or as a placeholder. But yes, we will be presenting that as part of the presentation.
And the Houston Reconnect, that's what, the 8.11 million
As I recall, yes,
is the impact on slide 4?
not in the first year, but yeah. The
Yeah,
first year is pure scholarship expense. Yeah, no, that's not it. Right, correct. 8.1 is the scholarship cost for year 1.
And then by year 2, it's a 4.56 hit potentially.
Would generate 3.4 net.
And that's the increment. Essentially, year 1, you're taking a $8.1 million hit, but by year 2, should have
Correct.
generated in excess of 3.42 on
Correct.
the revenue side. As far, this probably a question for the Chancellor. There was, on the funding side for Coleman College, is parking at Coleman factored into special requests? And if I might just preface for colleagues, Coleman College is the one campus where our students have to pay to park and fend for themselves. And so it's a unique scenario when you consider all the campuses within the system. So
Certainly, we did not specifically factor in the Coleman College parking. We can do that. With the amount of money that we were looking at, and Dr. Hahn referenced from the fund balance, that could potentially include a component of that as well. One of the reasons why we did not include it, to be very candid, is because we were thinking about a lot of the students who would be coming here for some of the evening and weekend classes, that the parking is free for them. Others can come and they can utilize our garage. This is a 24/7 building. And so we thought that given that we opened with over 430 students at this location, that we would continue to grow and expand here. One of the pieces of information that we received from TMC is that there was limited parking. And so if we're going to add additional monies to the budget for parking at Coleman, then we would be looking at perhaps additional evening classes, additional weekend classes as well, which would then mean that perhaps that would mean additional cost allocated for the staffing of those facilities when that staffing is already here at this location. But with the set aside that Dr. Hahn referenced, that would indeed provide us with that opportunity to provide the additional support for those students who would be going to Coleman for the programs there.
Certainly, and if I should respond to that, as it currently stands, without changing anything at Coleman, our students who come there over off of Pressler have to pay to park. The way it's currently structured, faculty and staff, there's a contract at the adjacent parking lot, and they utilize that. The students that I've talked to, through my firsthand primary survey, unpaid survey that I do, they express that they park at the lot next door to it. And so at one point, the thought process was perhaps we could talk to that lot owner, since our students were already paying to park there, and they carpool and they find ways. But I think from a practical standpoint, if a student is working a job and we're asking them to go to Coleman and they have a 1 o'clock class, if they're going to avoid paying to park there, that's adding 30 minutes to their commute pretty easily. And so I think Dr. Harrison has heard feedback from students. I hear from even community folks, even those who aspire to come to Coleman. One of the things that always seems to be a burden has been the parking, and we've talked about this, and I think as we're considering priorities, even if we went to go find a parking lot with a shuttle that would bring them back and forth and just make it more seamless. The issue with the solution here, you have to pull up, park, and then hope Metro is at the right time, and so on. And you still have to pay for that fare to get them back and forth. So I think it's an important enough priority that we should be weighing that option as we consider the budget discussions.
Well, certainly we will, Mr. Chair, we'll be more than happy to do that. In fact, one of the things that we do know is that some of the students who go to Coleman do park on the Central College campus. Others of them park here and then take the shuttle. But as we are thinking about the additional programs that will be added at Coleman College that will align AI with the health care, this certainly could create additional options for our students who would be going there. So I think that this is something that obviously, as we conduct a survey to find out just how many students really are parking in that additional lot, and then look at what we can calculate in terms of the dollar amount that would be required for those students, in addition to perhaps calculating those who might be coming in for the AI and healthcare courses that would be offered there as well, to give you a dollar amount that we could estimate would be appropriate.
Okay.
We'll be happy to do that.
That'd be helpful. Finally, Dr. Hahn, for the out-of-district tuition rate reduction, we're contemplating or proposing the $121 reduction to $81.67. How did we determine that number? Why was it 32.5%? Or did we consider other, like if it was 20% versus 32%?
It was a swag. We just chose it.
Okay. Is it super onerous to have you
Not at all.
look at a second number? Like, 32 is one. Let's try 24 as well and just kind of see where that lands us. Or whatever number, I'm just
Sure,
throwing that
no
out.
problem. Yep. We can do that easily.
Yeah, I just think it gives us that graduating scale of if we don't go the full shebang, we'll know if we reduced it by this much, here's what it would be.
I have a question for the Chancellor. What is our minimum number of students and what is our maximum number of students per course on the average?
Well, it varies for some of the academic courses, such as English. It's like 25 students. In other classes, based on whether or not it is a workforce program, we have to determine that based upon the requirements by terms of the co-ops and the internships for our students as well, then that varies also. So we have the numbers and all of that is determined based upon those licensing agencies. But for some of the programs that we provide, as we start looking at the average class size of the campus, one of the things that we have discussed is having an average class size of at least 18, a minimum of 18 per campus. And that would then factor in the bottom line number that we have even for those smaller class sizes.
And the 25 is the maximum.
Right.
And that 25 is the average for community colleges across the state for those academic courses.
Some of them have larger,
Mike, please.
some have larger class sizes. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Some have larger class sizes, and as you will recall, and of course, we've not done the scan and the analysis of what the other colleges are doing, but we know they have large lecture halls also, where they enroll those students who are in those large, in those classes, where the capacity is much greater. And for us in online, we have that ability as well, but we've been very, very conscientious about looking at the academic rigor, integrity of all of what we offer so that we can ensure that all of our students get the quality of education that is required and also the support that they need with tutoring, et cetera. So that is why we have not had the classes that run to large numbers beyond what is acceptable for quality instruction.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is item E, update to FY 2026 budget workshop number 4. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. With your permission, once again, Mr. Chair, Dr. Sherry Hahn will present an update on the fiscal year 26 budget workshop number 4, based upon the discussions at the April 2nd meeting. Dr. Hahn.
Thank you once again. So we did just take another look at the 3 tuition assistance plans and updated the figures based on current information from THECB.
Hold on a second. The screen is not
Oh,
displaying.
I'm sorry. Thank you much. So that's, again, our first Houston Reconnect. This plan, once again, students that have stopped out within the last 5 years, 25 years of age or older, completed at least 30 semester credit hours so far. So we targeted the number of potential students, the estimated participation in the program, and you can see we've got reference codes that tie right and left side so you can tell where the numbers came from and the rationale, and then the number of completes. We calculated the tuition and fee impact based on the contact hours, et cetera, and the state appropriations money we would expect in year 2. Scholarship expense impacts every year, and then the revenue would follow in the second year. We updated HOPE as well, last dollar scholarship. This seemed like a less attractive alternative still because we're not seeing it generate revenue in the outer years. We're just seeing the scholarship expense year over year. And then the out-of-district tuition rate reduction, which is, we will do additional versions of it for you.
If I could just add another comment. I think when we were first talking about this, it would help to know what our comparison is to our peer institutions, like what did they charge per hour out-of-district students, so that there's also some guideline rather than just us arbitrarily throwing up percentage numbers to see it. Because I think the whole premise is, can we attract students from other service areas, other community college service areas to come to HCC?
Sure.
Since we're jumping in for questions, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
So I mentioned before that the 5-year outlook is a best practice that I would encourage us to use, and I think these 3 opportunities are areas where I think we would benefit from that. I say that because, again, I've got screenshots of every time we've talked about Reconnect on my phone for easy swiping. And the one that we talked about in February showed, I think, the revenues from the years were a little bit out of sync. So I know we've got the revenues here for year 2 for Reconnect at just shy of $8 million, and I know there's been a correction because of the HB 2110 potential concern. But the next year, we're at $25 million in revenue because of that credential of value carry through as more students persist and complete. And I think showing a 5-year view will really just show the full picture of the opportunity. It looks a little sad with just the 2-year view, and it kind of buries the lead a little bit. So
We will take care of that.
thank you.
Next, Trustee Cheatham. Please, carry on.
All right. Well, and again, this presentation is the update based on questions that came out earlier in April. So some of this we've already covered. The funding request, we provided the detailed context that you were looking for. We've just covered that material. So I will skip to contingency planning. I've been talking with our facilities folks and our contract folks as strategies that we can adopt if we see a revenue hit or notice the changes. What can we do so that we're nimble in our response? And we can negotiate on page 11. We're looking at the contract options, longer payment terms, 60 or 90 days, limiting the scope of work, perhaps, de-scoping non-essential project elements, labor resource rates, renegotiating rates or substitute high-cost labor resource for lower-cost alternatives, checking contract termination. Sometimes we can get an early out if we give adequate notice, consolidating vendor contracts, and then maximizing rebates and volume discounts, which we should already be doing, just as a matter of practice. And then in terms of facilities, Bob would take care of the utilities, modifying temperature settings to reduce energy consumption, close lightly utilized buildings and reduce building operation hours, reduce housekeeping. Capital projects, I think, would bring the biggest benefit, slowing the pace of capital renewal projects, assuming that no safety is jeopardized in the process, and then slowing the pace of minor project enhancements. And that's what we had in terms of contingency plans. Any questions at all?
Colleagues, questions?
I do, Mr. Chair, back to the contingency for unforeseen revenue loss, contracted services, have we reviewed that? Because it's substantial. And we do understand that there are times that there are certain services that need to be contracted, but we have a lot of contractors in our departments. So can we add that to a full review of contracted services to reduce them and maintain those operations within their departments without that support?
I will work on that. It's unlikely that I can have that done by tomorrow when I have to
not
upload all the
tomorrow.
material.
Not
But we
tomorrow.
will begin work immediately.
Yeah, not tomorrow.
Just so 2 questions. One, what is our lingering fear about a scenario that might trigger revenue loss as things stand today, if any?
I have a few. They're actually in the budget presentation that you will see. My main concerns are something that happens on the federal level where FAFSA is not available, students can't get Pell, access to Pell, it's delayed or unavailable, or there is confusion and students don't know what to do. That's a deep concern because our students rely on that source. That's number one. And then number two, in our scenarios, we've got varying degrees of loss of international students. So despite the fact that we will have a global online program, I think students attending on-premise, international students, are sort of a cash cow aspect of our revenue stream, and I am concerned that, especially given some things that have happened in the Houston area of late where visas are it's just very disturbing. Those two things concern me the most. Other things can happen as well, but those two are concerning.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Can you all establish a break even for dual credit early college high school students? We always talk about how much we lose, but we have never discussed what the break even is, the number of students you need to maintain a break even. And the reason why I ask this is that Alamo Colleges has 20,000 early college high school and dual credit students. That's a phenomenal number of students for a city that size. And we sit in the middle of 4.2 million people. And we have, 6,000 students? That speaks volumes. And they have done a very good job at maintaining that. And in light of what is going on with HISD, more students are seeking the early college high school option, especially the parents when they don't have to pay. So if we increase our enrollment, what does that enrollment have to be for us to have a break even from the state reimbursing us every 15 hours?
Oh, we'll look into it.
And my last question is this summer, is the college still intending to do level 1 certification offer for all high school students?
We are open for level 1 certificates, and we've had those discussions as well. In fact, we are looking now at the summer enrollment opportunities for a number of students in P-TECH as well. So, yes, absolutely.
And the reason why I ask is because there's no information for it, and students are making decisions now rather than May. So in order to get those students involved, they will need to know that that option is available. And as I understand it, if every student, say we have 2,000 students across the district that take the level 1 certification and pass it, what does that dollar value look like for us, for the state to reimburse us? And the level 1 then allows them to be dual credit students so that they can continue to level 2 and level 3 if they successfully pass the TSI boot camp. There's a boot camp coming up on the 17th. So this will be the third boot camp. These decisions have to be made sooner rather than later. And if there is no marketing for that, because I do believe that's going to be a game changer, if there's no marketing for that level 1 certification, you're not going to get a lot of students to do this for the summer. And I do believe this is a game changer. I think this will make a huge impact to have that as many students as we can to do the level 1 certification, because that's an immediate payment. That does not fit into the 15 credit hour game. So that level 1, level 2, level 3 conceivably is easier for high school students. And when they graduate and they work 3 years, they become journeymen to the tune of $65 an hour plus. So this is a real thing for students to consider. And I can't answer the question, how many level 1 certifications do we have and where are they? I have no answer for that.
Well, we have been meeting with the superintendents in all of our service area districts, and we can tell you that we have prepared all of the documents to show all of the level 1 certificates as well as the earning potential. And we've connected with each one of the superintendents, and the presidents have been actively engaged as well in going out and working with the principals of the schools to establish those partnerships. And so through the social media, they're working on that to capture these students. For example, there was one successful event that was discussed at the last meeting with respect to the students who were the middle school students who visited the Coleman College of Health Sciences. And so I can say that while we have not seen the big announcements made, nonetheless, there have been reports shared with me from the presidents about the work that is underway at their colleges in partnership with their schools. for summer activities for their students.
I want to say I really appreciate that, and I have to say thank you to Dr. Perez, because she always accommodates those questions for me so that I can give the right answers. And I appreciate her team being able to turn a response on a dime. But I do know and understand how important this really is. If San Antonio College can put 20,000 high school students in early college high school, and I talked to Bruce Leslie, he said, oh, we established 16 early college high schools. And we have how many? We have, thank you, Dr. Perez.
We actually have close to 13,000.
Okay,
All right,
so they
so-
should not be outpacing us.
Right, but we are working on strategies on how we can get the information out, because keep in mind that the dual credit, we have to get the support of the schools to offer them. And so it means having to work with schedules to accommodate those students and to certain agreements. But we are trying to reach out to the parents who we know are the ones that will really push their students to take advantage of dual credit. So we hear you, and we are working in that direction. So
And
thank you
can
for your
those dual
comments.
credit classes be taken in the summer?
I'm sorry?
Can those dual credit classes be taken in the summer?
Yes, we do offer
And
some-
that makes that easier so that the schools that may or may not want to do it don't have to.
Yes, that's one of the things that we use in order to catch up like the early college high school students who may not be on schedule. So we use the summer to be able to do that. Last summer, as I believe we reported, we had the athletes program trying to encourage athletes to seek higher education. So we do, and we do other summer programs, again, just to get the word out about dual credit and to get the students interested in wanting to pursue higher education.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you. And if I have the information of social media marketing ready, I'll send that out. If you can get that to me,
Yes, we're
I will
working on it
certainly
now.
help promote. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank
Before you leave, Dr. Perez,
Yes,
do we
sir.
have are we able to have the addresses for every eighth grade student who's going to complete in May?
Well, we have an agreement with HISD to provide that kind of information, so we should be able to obtain that from
So
them.
this has been said before. I know the chancellor agrees with me, but we just have to get the administrative state to move in the direction of sending pre-admission certificates to every single eighth grader who finishes in May. Congratulations,
Right.
you're pre-admitted to Houston Community College. Do this your freshman year in high school, and starting sophomore year, come be with the big kids. You can go to early high school, early college, or just start taking dual credit programs. Like when you say reaching out to me, that's the carrot of, oh, you're already part of us. Just
Right.
show up.
Trustee, that's exactly what Dr. Lewis and I talked about in reference to what the youth symposium that happened on April the 5th. We're looking at what we're going to send to those students to show that they're now connected with Houston Community College. So we're looking at maybe sending them a little card. We're not quite sure on the
I
design
can
yet.
have my assistant help you design the certificate, make it cute and everything. Hey,
And that's-
look, you're
and that's
one of
another
us.
thing we
Come
can
on
do.
down.
So no, we're trying to get them to understand that now that they came to our campus, they are now part of HCC.
Can we extend that to every eighth grader in our service area?
We sure can.
If we can't,
We can work
I
on
can, I'll take some of Trustee Cheevan's tuition assistance money and put it towards that. It's all part of. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Oh, Chancellor,
I
please.
I would just like to opine as well. What Dr. Perez said is absolutely correct about our partnerships with the schools. But in addition to that, what we have is the Commit to Complete that has been very, very successful as we've worked with our students to ensure that whatever program they're in, whether it is for a certificate or for a degree, that we can give them all of the information, have them to sign the forms. We will have the milestone celebrations that they can then start working toward 15, 30, 45, 60 semester credit hours. And all of the presidents, in fact, have had that ceremony, and the students are very excited about looking at the next milestone that they can achieve. We're going to implement that with the public schools as well, so that we can capture those students early on, and that's a part of the plan that we have been developing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions? One last question, Dr. Hahn. On the consolidation of vendors' contracts, I just think we'd be remiss not to flag that one of the things that this board has expressed an interest in is making sure that we're expanding opportunity to the small businesses within our community. So in a cost-saving strategy, I think let's move that a little further down the list of things to do. Let Bob McCracken turn off every light himself if he has to before we start pushing small businesses out from opportunities if we can.
Sounds great.
I wouldn't do that to you, Bob, but you were next on the list of things to do, so thanks. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our final item for discussion today is item F, FY 2026 budget scenario number 3, guiding principles. This is a report item. No action is required. Dr. Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the board. And so with your permission, Mr. Chair, Dr. Sherry Hahn will provide the fiscal year 2026 budget guiding principles. Dr. Hahn.
Thank you again. I just wanted to give you some sense of our thinking about developing scenario 3, but since then, we've now developed, 3 additional scenarios. Our original presentation involved the flat budget, as you recall, $465 million, because of our concerns about knowns and unknowns. We provided an alternate budget, which I believe was $442 million. That would have involved no deferred maintenance, no fund balance use for any reason, so that was pretty dire. So based on taking another look at the figures, scenario 3 and the additional other 3 scenarios will look at enrollment growth, not extraordinary, but some moderate enrollment growth. It exceeded 7% in the spring of FY25 for both students and semester credit hours. We heard you when you made that comment. We agree. So scenario 3 is sort of modest, but then we've gotten a little more creative with the other 3 scenarios. Each one of them is sort of a growth, rosier, more optimistic view. Our revenue estimates reflect slight tuition and fee increases due to enrollment growth, but still include expected impacts from COV changes and loss of international students. We're still mindful of that. We haven't let go of that. We had 2 previous tax options, decrease the total rate in one and maintain the total rate in the other. We are now, I think, going to present, if I remember correctly, I just looked at it this morning, 6 or 7 tax options. I don't recall exactly, but many more to choose from. So when this was written, we just had a 3rd scenario with a tax rate. We have more choices at this point in what we've built. The cost of living increase will still be included for faculty and staff, and the new longevity schedule will still have 6 new tiers instead of the 4 we had before. We are also contemplating a small increase in the faculty professional development fund amount. I believe we are also considering another element not on here, it happened after this was written, to bring, and I might need Mr. Nathan to help me describe this, faculty or staff who had not benefited by the market adjustment up to that adjusted rate, even after the changes that occurred previous years. And that's not very expensive, and we think it's the right thing to do. In terms of operating expenses, we are still trying to trim 10% across all operating expense accounts. Departments will have and we've done this, departments have now the ability to manipulate that number to suit themselves and their operating needs. Staffing is strategically and carefully increased to accommodate program growth. IT staff will be added to ensure that departments have the coverage they require during operating hours at all locations and all buildings. And administrative staff is added to support enhanced planning as needed. And finally, additional dollars will be allocated to deferred maintenance since, as you've seen, the flat budget provided only a portion of the actual need, which is $44 million annually. So it's no longer true on page 6. We are not building the budget. We have built the budget. Let me catch you all up on this. And we're going to have that ready and uploaded for the board meeting on the 7th. We're going to do that tomorrow. We have 2 strategies and actually others now for the use of potential $10 million of fund balance from this year as seed money to maximize future performance funding. We're calling it managing the completers, so we benefit by state reimbursement or attracting new students in enrollment, or the alternative is deciding on a tuition assistance plan instead. So that will be coming up in the next presentation. And we just want to thank you very much for the questions because they really inspire us to take a deeper look at the issues. There's a lot of moving parts, and your wisdom helps guide what we actually review and analyze. So thank you from the whole team. Happy to answer any additional questions you have.
Please, trustees.
Just one clarification for me. I just want to make sure scenario 3 that I understand it, that we'll be covering the $44 million in deferred maintenance, hopefully also including the contingency, will be in covering the IT budget in its entirety, the compliance portion of it.
Portion.
Okay.
I think 15 million in total,
For
if I remember correctly. Again,
IT? I think that covers everything then. About right.
Well, 15 million for IT and deferred.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Yeah.
So I think in that case, it would be helpful to highlight which of the compliance items we are not doing and the risk associated with it. I know in the next 24 hours that you have to get it uploaded. But I just wanted to make sure that those things are covered, and then to make the inflows equal the outflows, the cuts are coming from operating expenses. Am I understanding that properly?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I just do want to say I really appreciate, we provided a lot of feedback at the last meeting, and we appreciate y'all acting on it and turning this around so quickly. I think this has been a great discussion today.
Thank you as well.
Colleagues, other questions? So, my question, I wasn't going to let you just,
I know.
It's our last hurrah. It's our special Thursday meeting date. So, I know some of the presidents are ready for happy hour. They have to wait a little longer. But to Trustee Cheevan's point, do we have a scenario that's going to look at us meeting the IT needs and us meeting the deferred maintenance, that's $44 million? We don't have that scenario contemplated. Is there a reason we could not contemplate that scenario? And in lieu of some of the other priorities, whether it's tuition assistance or not reducing homestead exemption or not increasing homestead exemption, rather?
I don't know. We can take a look at it. I don't think there's a way to get enough revenue generated to cover that volume of expense.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that about bringing faculty up to park. And Mr. Nathan, just chime in on that, just so
Sure.
we have clarity on what that entails.
Absolutely, Trustee. So we did an excellent job with the increases that you all approved for this fiscal year. And actually, across our full-time faculty rates, we moved up 11 steps in terms of how we compare to other colleges across the state. So we moved up from 21. We were at 21 previously. We moved up 11 steps. And so that brought our average up significantly, but our minimum faculty salary for our faculty members right now is still low. And so included in the scenario will be the opportunity to look at funding to bring up that, and it's roughly 47 people. So, well, 42 people, 47,000.
Just to better understand that, the progress we made was for existing faculty.
Existing faculty, as well as our ability to offer higher salaries for people coming in that we've been hiring. So we moved the minimum or the maximum that a new faculty member could come in from step 7 to step 10. And that made a significant difference in how we've been able to attract faculty where we might have had, some difficulty before from a salary standpoint.
But it sounds like there's some incumbent faculty who now were disadvantaged because they're
Right,
were already.
and what we want to be conscious of is when we now hire folks, we're not creating a scenario where someone who's already here is now automatically leaped over.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. If there are no other questions, I guess this meeting is now adjourned at 3:33 p.m. All right.
And, Mr. Chair, I know the meeting is adjourned, but no happy hour yet.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, is all I'm saying.